Hey everyone, this is a quick video which, I don't know, I've resisted doing this ever since COVID lockdown happened, but I found Ollie's video today really interesting. So Ollie from Criminolly did a really interesting video that I'll post down below about a study that he'd read that people that were used to horror were more able to deal with COVID and the lockdown process. And he talks about other reasons why he was fine with that as well, saying he was an introverted character. And it was just interesting to hear a friend talk about the COVID pandemic, the lockdown, the whole thing that happened. And I haven't talked about it on the channel, even though I did have a channel during that period, but I just didn't talk about it. And the only sign that the only sign of anything that had happened is the big beard that I grew over that summer because I was recovering from hospital. And I grew a COVID beard, so I decided I wasn't gonna shave until I'd felt better. So through the whole of that summer, I grew that beard. So there's a video. One of my videos, I've got a ridiculously big beard, for me anyway, and that was because I'd left it, and it was like I wanted to sort of shave with that sort of extra pleasure that I was better, because it was such a scary time. So I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about it, and I'd love to know your experiences, because I do find it really fascinating, because it was obviously such a huge thing for us, that we went through it, and we're at the other end of it, and life's back to normal again. For most of us, I think some people suffer from long COVID, and that's a serious thing. My wife thinks I'm still got it, but I don't think I have got long COVID. I'm just getting old. But yeah, I'll just talk about the way it affected me. So it affected me personally, health-wise. I'll get to that in a minute. It affected my job a lot. It affected my gigging a lot. My life as a musician changed a lot. It also affected my family, because there was a wedding in the middle of all this, and it also affected booktube, because I got more active on here, and I think that's, the pandemic is definitely a huge reason why YouTube content creators got more active, and there was a lot more of them. I think that's definitely true. So I've only seen a couple of people directly say that, but I think it's definitely true that more people did that. So yeah, I do think it's a really interesting thing to talk about, because it was such a big thing. Even, and maybe it is better to talk about it after it happened, because as you see from the thumbnail, I apologise for the dramatic thumbnail, but I wouldn't have wanted to talk about it at the time. I did put up messages on Facebook because I was getting so many messages and gifts and stuff, but I'll get to that in a minute, because I wanted to talk about some general stuff first. So I'm a teacher, and teaching online doing these Zoom calls was crazy, absolutely crazy. It was so difficult to do it. There was you could have people that were there but then just decided to leave the room. When someone spoke, and then someone else spoke at the same time, it would just be already fuzzy and difficult to hear what they were saying. And I'm a music teacher as well, so a lot of it's practical, so I had to shift everything I was doing into the academic stuff. And they do the course because they want to play music, so it was very frustrating. And when we were allowed to be in the classroom during that period, I wasn't allowed to use rehearsal rooms, so the students had to learn everything at home, and they couldn't rehearse together. They just had to play on the kind of stage area that I've got in my main music room, and that was tough for them. And they did a fantastic job, but it was tough. And anything that you might be a little bit embarrassed about, or you haven't quite got quite right yet, you might be happy to keep working on it in a rehearsal room, but you might not be particularly happy to do it in front of the whole class. So there was lots of elements to teaching that made it so difficult. But the students all turned up for the Zoom lessons, which was great. But it was just not a very ideal way of doing it. So anyone that thinks, oh great, let's just work from home, definitely not good for teachers, and certainly not good for my particular subject as well. So that was difficult. I'll talk about the wedding. So, my daughter, who you've met if you've seen a couple of live streams ago, she got married during COVID, and she actually put off her wedding twice. And it was such a stressful thing for her and Elliot, her husband, because she really wanted this dream wedding like anyone else would want. And she knew she wasn't going to get it, and all the restrictions made it that she put it off the first time. And then the second time, she almost did it, and then thought, no, she needs to put it off again. And then in the end, she said, no, they both decided they had to do it. And they had a second celebration day where they did all the speeches, and it was all, when everything calmed down and things got back to normal again. It was a lovely day, though, despite the restrictions, but it was just a really, really stressful and upsetting thing for her, because, you only get married once, hopefully, and and she wants it to be special. So, I mean, we hired a special car for her that was like this old vintage car, which was a surprise for her. And a few people turned up outside the registry office, which was nice. So that was like an extra surprise for her. She had a surprise for me. So we walked down the aisle. Obviously, everyone had masks on, but we walked down the aisle with her choosing one of my songs, Written with Love, as the music. So that was a really beautiful moment. So I'll never forget that. So there were some lovely moments in it. But there was only 10 of us there, and that was it. Then they went off and did their own thing as a couple. My daughter being my daughter, they went down to the arcades down the seafront and played bowling, and went around the arcades in her wedding dress, which is fantastic. So that was brilliant. And then we had an evening. We met up with Elliot's parents, her husband's parents, and we had a meal together, which was nice. But and Jess, my daughter, was going around the restaurant again with masks on, offering them wedding cake, which was brilliant. And the restaurant were really nice, and they were quite happy for that to happen. But yeah, I mean, it was an extremely stressful thing for them, for both of them, and they made the best of it. And then they had a fantastic day when things calmed down and they could do what they wanted to do, which was great. But that definitely affected her and definitely affected us as a family, because obviously I don't like seeing my daughter upset, and we try to do our best to make the most of it. And we were sort of trying to advise her all the time as she was making decisions about whether to put it off or to do it and all that kind of stuff. So that was true. Obviously the gigs slowed down, just round to a halt basically. And then there was a couple of moments where we were allowed certain allowances. So we did a gig on the rooftop, so far away from an audience, in the middle of a street at one point, which is great. We did another one on the seafront that was organised by the council, which had like circular areas for different families to sit in, which was quite cool. But pretty much gigging stopped for a while. So luckily I had a day job, but I had so much sympathy for the people that were literally earning all of their money from gigging. That would have killed them. So it was a real struggle, and I know the venues had a real problem as well. And our big venue, we're really lucky to have it. Our massive venue down the road, they did get some funding. They got some help, but they asked for the public to give them some help as well. I set up a thing on Bandcamp, which was like our live album as like a charity thing. To if anyone bought it, the money would go straight to the venue. I thought that would help. But yeah, really tough times for musicians and for gigging. And then the other thing, which you'd have to mention, is when I did get it, I got it bad. So I had it. So it just screamed through my class at one point. One of my second year classes, someone got it, and then there was about 12 people that got it in that class. There's tons of people got it. Yeah. So once that happened, I got it, and I was off work, isolating, and I thought, fine, I'll just isolate for a bit, and I assumed it would be a bad cold. And over the course of the first week, it went from bad to worse, and then by the next Saturday, it was pretty frightening, and I couldn't breathe properly, and we called an ambulance, and the ambulance came down. We thought just to check it out, and maybe they'd give us some advice, and that's it. But then they said we need to get him to the hospital now. I went to the hospital. I was put on 2 drips and a ventilator, and while I was in hospital, every night, it was pretty scary. Every night, I stopped being able to talk properly. I couldn't really move very well. I couldn't breathe very well, and then every night about 8:30, I'd start this sort of process that lasted until about 3 a.m. where I literally thought that was it. I thought my breathing was going to stop, and it was so scary. So I've never had anything like that before. I've never been ill really badly. I've been lucky, but that was really scary. And everyone, family was scared. Lots of friends, I've had thousands of messages and lots of gifts and stuff, which is great. But yeah, really scary. And then it took me about 6 weeks to recover from that. So yeah, about 6, maybe a bit more, about 6 weeks, where I just couldn't walk or talk. I had a wheelchair for a while. We actually had a holiday booked in Wales, and we took the wheelchair with us. So yeah, it was such a strange experience, and it was a wonderful thing where right at the end of August. So I caught it in the beginning, at the end of last week of June, I caught it. And at the end of August, we had a festival. We had to cancel lots of gigs, obviously. I couldn't barely speak, let alone sing. And I was really frightened about not being able to sing again. And then just at the end of August, there was this big festival that we really wanted to play. And I said to the rest of the band, look, there's 4 singers in the band. Do it without me. They're all going, no, we can't do it without you. So I had this wonderful moment that was such an emotional moment where I did start to get my voice back just before, and I sent them a message with me singing something, and it was such a big thing. So actually, it's pretty good that I'm talking about this years later, because I don't think I'll be able to do it. And that was a really lovely thing, and we did play the festival. I did say we rearranged the songs so I wouldn't sing as much. But in the end, on the night, I could have done what I normally do, so that was pretty good. And then I sort of took the gigs gentler after that and tried to divvy out the vocals through the band a little bit more, and then sort of gradually recovered my voice. But yeah, that was such a scary time. But yeah, it's interesting what I'm going back to now. I've just said all that. It's interesting going back to what Ollie said in the video about how horror makes you more, or arguably, according to this research, makes you more able to cope with those kind of things. I think in general, if you're more curious, going back to this thing that I've said before on the channel about being more curious, if you are more curious and you do interact with more things, and you are challenged more in your thought processes, and you're challenged in life because you take risks, I think those things do make you stronger and more resilient for those kind of things, I think. But yeah, strange times that was. So let me know how it affected you. I'd love to know how it affected your family, or how it affected you personally, or how it affected your job. I think it's such an interesting subject that we haven't really talked about since, because we're just glad it's over, probably. But at the time, I think we probably would have talked about it a lot more. Although I definitely didn't talk about it when I was recovering from it, and there was just a gap in my videos. But I wasn't putting a lot of videos up at the time anyway, so I've become a lot more active on here ever since. So yeah, let me know what happened to you guys. But